This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Norma.
Good evening. My name's Norma, and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to thank Michelle for asking me here tonight. It is an honor and a privilege to be asked to speak at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to welcome all the newcomers. Congratulations to all the chip takers, and happy birthday. But mainly, I want to welcome the newcomers to Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to let you know it works good, and it works slow, doesn't it? Everything I'm going to say here tonight's my opinion only. I don't know if this is the way my life went down, but it's the way I see it. You can tell I'm a Mexican, right? Well, I'm of the Mexican variety that my family had parties Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And in the olden days, they didn't buy six-packs or cases of beer. They bought kegs of beer. And they used to put it in the bathtub with those big blocks of ice and those chunks of salt. And I believe I was born with the disease of alcoholism. I also believe I was born a liar, a cheat, and a manipulator because it comes so natural to me. When they had those parties, they used to think it was cute to give us all a glass of beer. You know, like our coffee cup, 8 ounces, 4 ounces. And I'd go from relative to relative to get that beer. You know, it was so fun, so exciting, all the music, all the laughter, and I loved the way keg beer tasted. I'd sneak in there and pump nothing but foam beer. I like foam beer. The first feeling I remember having as a child is I felt unloved, unwanted, and discarded. I am the youngest of 2. And my older sister used to get to sleep with my mother. And the first feeling I remember having is feeling unloved and unwanted and discarded, you see. I used to sleep in a little walk-in closet. And I remember I used to wake up in the middle of the night crying and yearning for my mother because I was afraid. I never understood why I didn't get to sleep with my mother. The truth of the matter is I wet the bed. That's why I didn't get to sleep. But you know, I didn't know that was a reason. When you're 4 years old, you don't know that's the reason. I just felt unloved, unwanted, and discarded. Excuse me. When I was a kid, we lived behind my grandmother's house. My mother is an alcoholic. And when I was a kid, they never let us have chocolate, potato chip soda. They said it was bad for your hair, bad for your teeth. And my grandmother always had a 2-pound box of See's candy in the refrigerator. So when nobody was around, I'd sneak in there and slam that chocolate in my face. I've ate it like that for many years. And my mother would show up and she'd say, "Norma, did you eat that chocolate?" And I'd say no. She'd grab me by the arm and give me that rapid fire, I didn't eat it, I swear I didn't eat it. She'd grab me by the arm and take me to the mirror, and there'd be chocolate all over my face. And I don't know how it got there. I don't know if you'd be an alcoholic of my variety, but my head said, "Don't tell." You see, I never felt safe with that woman because I was a battered child. But I'm telling you what kind of a child I was. You know, so my head said, "Don't tell, Norma. The price you will pay for hanging on will be a lot less than if I told the truth." So I always hung on to the lie. When I'm from Santana, I should be from Santana, but I'm from Orange. And we moved to Loma. And back in those days, this is so weird to stand on this, but back in those days in Loma, it was just cows and country land, you know, just farmland. And we moved over there, and we lived on this ranch, and I had my first 3-day blackout drunk when I was 8 years old. We had a baptism. I remember it was Friday and then it was Sunday. And I came to about 1 or 2 in the afternoon on Sunday, walking on the side of the house. and I could hear them inside talking about me, about how drunk I had gotten. And that was the first time I felt shame and remorse. I didn't know what I did, but I knew it was bad. I'm also a recovering Catholic, if there's any Catholics in here. But when I was a kid, we'd go to Catholic school. And you're supposed to go in there and tell the priest your sins. And they had these murals of God striking you down if you broke those 10 commandments. You know what they are. Honor your mother and father, don't lie, don't steal. I did all that stuff. So, and the nuns, they were so mean. They always shook me. They always put paper in my mouth, put my gum on my nose. And so when I would go into the confessional, I'm supposed to tell the priest my sins. And I'm telling him, well, maybe I lied once or twice or stole a half a time. I wasn't telling him anything either. And those days, I don't know how they do it nowadays, but those days in the morning, supposed to take the body of Christ, and you're not supposed to eat before you take the body of Christ. I always ate, just to see what God gonna do, Because they said he was gonna get me. And I was a lonely child. I was a battered child. I was a liar. I was a thief. And my mother, I always remember when I was a kid, like I said, my mother, I have an older sister, and when I would do something wrong and my mother would discover it, she'd say, Lorraine, Norma, who did this? And she would say she didn't do it. And I would say, I didn't do it, so we'd start getting the belt, and I didn't do it, she didn't do it. I don't know what happened that my mother knew I did it, and I never once thought about what my sister went through behind my lies, the payment she paid. Where was my sister when the screaming and the yelling and the hearing of the belts? Where was my sister? I never took her in consideration. I've always been out for myself. I used to go out where the horses were, and I used to pray to God. I used to pray to God to please bring me my daddy back, because when my daddy was around, my mother wasn't so violent. They used to say that my daddy was away at college. The truth of the matter is my father was a heroin addict, and he was in the joint a lot. And so God couldn't bring him back. And my mother, she would beat on me, and after some time she'd come and she'd cry and she'd hug me, she'd stroke me and tell me how much she loved me. And she always told me that my daddy loved me a lot, but he was a very sick man. But you see, my mother never cleaned it up for herself, and she was an alcoholic. So I used to look, when I would pray to God, I used to look for my daddy and my good mommy in the barns where we kept the oats and the hay, and in the cupboards. I used to think that someplace, somewhere, they were duct taped, gagged. As a child, I always lived in a delusion of an illusion. You see, when my daddy would come back, everything will be wonderful, and we will live like this, and I always had that image in my head. And when I didn't find them, I gave God the finger. I said, I am never going to pray to you again, and I meant it with everything I had. My mother got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 10 years old, and she moved us to Pomona. The girls ratted up their hair, wore tight skirts in the 5th grade, okay? And they used to wait for us every day after school to give us our initiation, and every day I'd cry to the teacher, they're going to beat me up. And the last day of school, the guys and the girls, they cornered my sister, and they were beating her up, and I went and I flagged a guy down. He pulled her out, he took us home, and that evening when we went home, my sister started to tell my mom what had happened, and my mother got all upset, and right away she got on the phone, and she called that school district, and she made sure that my sister didn't have to go back to that school. And one more time, I wasn't loved enough, and one more time, I didn't matter because I had to go back to that school. And every day those girls used to wait for me to beat me up, and every day I'd cry to the teacher. You see, I never felt Mexican enough. You see, because I didn't speak Spanish then. And I didn't have a burrito. I wasn't raised on beans and tortillas and all that good Mexican food. I mean, my mom was an alcoholic. She didn't cook. I was raised on pot pies, TV dinners, and bologna sandwiches, So I never felt Mexican enough, and You know, we do a lot of geographics. My mother was a great AA'er. She went to meetings every single day. From 7:30 to 10 o'clock, Mama was at the meetings. From 7:30 to 9:30, we had the boys over. We're doing a little spray paint, a little glue. My drug of choice is whatever you got. You know, because, you know, there was no alcohol. Mama's trying to get sober. You know, and my mother, I remember giving my mother her first year cake. And she got up to the podium and she started telling everybody how wonderful things were. And I looked over at my sister and I said, with a real Angie, please stand up. You see, because my mother was still kicking my butt in her sobriety. Forget the things I was doing. She moved us to Montclair where there's no ghetto. The book talks about seeking lower companions. I took 3 buses to get to the barrio. That's the ghetto, right? I was the best dressed chola in the barrio. All the girls wanted to be my friend. Why? Because I got allowance and I paid for everything. I was always a big shot. You know, and if you had a problem with a girl, I'd take care of it for you. I had a lot of suppressed anger and willing to share it. And at home, I was timid and meek and frightened and sneaky. You know, and sneak out, sneak out. I did all these crazy things because of the excitement. I loved the excitement. Anyway, fast forward, we moved to Montclair, and I'm taking the barrio, and la, 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 la. And, you know, I'm a chameleon. I can hang out with anybody. You guys are kind of young. You probably won't know these words, but I used to hang around with the socias. You know, that's a goody-goody two-shoes. And the surfers, you know, the guys with the black hair. And the low-riders. I was never into bikers. I didn't want to mess up my hair, you know. And that's when everybody used to wear their hair big, you know. And anyway, the cool thing in those days, in the early 1970s, was smoking. That was cool. If you smoked at school, you were cool. I'd go into the bathroom and we'd smoke. And this particular day, I'd go into the bathroom and all the girls are talking about this guy. He's 6'3", has blonde hair, blue eyes. He has a nice car and a car show. He works, he has money. All the girls wanted him. I don't know about you ladies, but I don't know what I like. But if everybody else wants it, I gotta have it. So I married this guy at 16, right? He introduces me to Boone's Farm apple wine and Reds. Ooh, I thought it was violent before. As soon as I got that combination, it was on. We went to a house party. It must have been me, and I was a newlywed. I was at a house party, and I was kind of like semi-passed out on the shoulder. You know, kind of going in and out. And he was going to the liquor store. And then when I noticed him again, he's coming through the door, and he's got the bag of booze, right? And some chick comes through the door. She's got a bag of booze, too. I looked over there. I knew he was with her. There was a beer bottle by me. I picked it up and broke it on his face, just in case. I had a little rowdy problem. And shortly after that, he tried to divorce me, so I tried to kill him. And I stole his custom car, and I didn't even know how to drive. Took down half the garage, and he went to get the keys out, and I had a full bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine. He put his head in, and I whacked him. He fell out. Some girl came. I got in a fight with her, too, and when he gets out of the hospital, his family sends him to Ontario, Canada. They're Dutchmen. They're dairy people. They go to. I don't never been heard of Ontario, Canada. I wasn't good. I don't even think I passed history once, you know. And when I get out of juvenile hall, I say I'm really going to kill this guy. The truth of the matter is that I was probably going to beg him out, you know, plead him, don't leave me, I'll be good, la, 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 you know. And I lived in Montclair. Now, he went to Ontario, Canada. And this is the time everybody used to hitchhike. So you remember when everybody used to hitchhike? A bunch of girls get in the car. That's how we got around. There were no buses. You know, got a bunch of girls hang out, you know. And anyway, I hitchhiked to, I'm going to Ontario, Canada. I don't know where it's at. But I get as far as Columbus, Ohio. I want you to know there's no Mexicans in Columbus, Ohio. But I'll tell you what, I started drinking, I started partying, I forgot what my primary purpose was, right? And it was around the holidays, and I had called my home, and I had talked to my stepdad, answered the phone, and he told me my mom had contemplated suicide. And my mother was about 5 or 6 years sober. And I came back. And see, I've been to hundreds and hundreds of AA meetings since I was 10 years old. When I was 12, I got to go to Alateen, you know. I've been to all the potlucks. My mother was always very involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I went to meetings, and I remember sitting in the front row when I was in trouble at school, and I had to come to AA because that was my punishment for being bad so they could watch me. And I'd sit in that front row and listen to those speakers, and I'd say, wow, what an exciting life they had. Too bad they're old, they ain't got nowhere else to go, so they come to AA. So when I came back from Columbus, Ohio, intuitively I said, I got to get rid of that wine and those reds. That stuff makes me too violent. I know what I need. I need to get myself a job, buy myself a car, a lowrider, so I buy myself a 64 Chevy. You know, the kind with the big steering wheel? But I have to get a little 6-inch because I can't see over the top. Get rid of those reds and those reds and that apple wine. And I switched to a little 151 Bacardi and RC Cola. You know, my life is all about chapter 3. I never heard chapter 3 in those days. I never heard that they read them in the meetings. But my life is about chapter 3. So I switched again to 151 Bacardi. Then we moved back to Orange. By then I'm claiming Ontario is where I'm from. That's my barrio. And in these days, you know, we used to, remember Priscilla Presley with that big hairdo? We used to put 2 cascades in there with those big old barrels and wear those big eyelashes on the top and on the bottom, wear the line from the peak of the nose all the way the hairline around, you know, and wear those hot pants, you know, and look good, you know. And you see, and then we go to Ontario and beat up the girls from Chino, you know, the girls from out of town. And then the next day we go pick up our hair where they pulled it out. We had to go look for it. I'm sorry, I did this every single day. I mean, I did this every single weekend. You know, at the beginning, I only drank Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then it went to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, hump day, today, right? And then it kind of like enmeshed into one big old party time, right? And I must be about 17, and it's about, you know, the normies call it Monday, but I call it Sunday. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, I have to come home, go to sleep. You know, I figure if I haven't gone to sleep yet, Sunday ain't over yet. You know, and I go home, and I have to hurry up and go to sleep. You know, because I have to get up in the morning, so I have to drop a little black beauties or whites. I don't know what you guys call them nowadays. But, you know, I had to get up because if I passed out, my mom might think I was an alcoholic, right? And I used to line my bedroom. I had a street side bedroom, and I used to line it with my empty 151-gallon bottles, empty, of course. And on this one particular day, a woman who has passed away, her name was Irish Annie, and she asked me if I had a problem with alcohol. And I said, heck no, I'm not having a problem with alcohol. I'm having fun. The prices weren't that great, you see. You see, like I said, I started partying every single day. And what happened for me is it must have been on a dumb Tuesday. You know how Tuesday ain't got no purpose? My cousin invited me to his house, and his in-laws' house. They were having a baptism or anniversary or something. And I just had, you know, a 10-ounce shot of whiskey. If you be an alcoholic like me, that's the right size, 10 ounces. You know, the little shot glasses are for the normies that don't know how to handle it, right? You know, and I had a 10-ounce glass of whiskey, and I blacked out. And the next day, my cousin's wife, who didn't drink, came over home to my house the next day. She said I'd been all over a cousin of mine, that I'd been sitting on his lap and stroking his hair, and I cringed at the idea. You see, when I was a kid, I always felt like he was trying to molest me, like he was always rubbing up on me the wrong way or luring. So when she said I did that, I got a little concerned. Like I said, I've been to hundreds and hundreds of AA meetings, and I switch again. I decide to go back to school and broaden my horizons. I decide to take on more I start jogging 10 miles a day. I move into a reborn, furnished Christian apartment. I'm not drinking, I'm not violent. Just smoke a little weed. You know weed ain't bad. You know it's natural and comes from the dirt. I have to take a hard class like political science, so I smoke a little reefer right before I go to take the final and read the same sentence over and over. I took that class 4 semesters in a row. Same seat, same instructor, same great notes. Never missed a day in class. You know, I better get sober quite quick now. And what happened is my girlfriend came over to my furnished Christian apartment. I hadn't drank for 3 years, just a little mota. And I had a shot of tequila. And then it was 2 pints, and she asked one of the guys where he lived. And I don't know why alcohol always seems to enhance all my resentments or anything that might stir my actions. What happened is I got a little upset. There was a baseball bat by me. I picked up the bat, destroyed the furnished apartment. The guys left. I bit her nipple, destroyed the furnished apartment. The cops came, got in a confrontation with the cops, ran out the door, knocked on the landlady's door and said, "Pray for me," as they're taking me to jail. And it had been 3 years since I had a drink of alcohol. And like I said, I've been to hundreds and hundreds of AA meetings. I switched to a little social heroin. You know, heroin don't stay social very long. Everything I swore I wouldn't do, I started doing. And when that quit working, I switched to a little cocaine. We can increase this list ad infinitum. I would do anything to keep from being like my mother. And inevitably what happened for me is I put all my things in a shopping cart. I was 28. I got sober when I was 34. And I put all my things in the shopping cart. After a while, everything does stop working. I started seeing bugs going up my face. I suffered from a lot of DTs. I got the tweezers and tried to kill them. And I plucked all my eyebrows out, all my eyelashes. I had sores all over my face and all over my hand. I was always trying to show them to you, and you would just step away. You see, I am that homeless woman walking on the streets with layers and layers of clothes on, talking to themselves. I weighed 76 pounds. I wore a size 7 little girl. And every now and then I would yearn for my mother, and I would call her up, collect, of course, and she was a true example of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she would love on me, and she'd say, "How are you, mijita?" And I am always fine. You see, because inevitably that life was the normal life for me. I couldn't differentiate the truth from the false. I would be hungry and yearning for warm toast and oatmeal on those cold nights. I never sold my body out there because I didn't think anybody would buy it. I always will be grateful to the ladies of the night who let me sleep on the floor of their motel rooms or the restroom or the patio. I will always be grateful for those brave women. And I would yearn for that oatmeal and that toast, and I'd stand in those free eating lines. And I'd be the first one at 7 o'clock when they'd start serving. And I'd go down that line and they'd give me cold toast. And I'd start hollering and screaming, "Don't you know I've been waiting here all night long?" And they'd 86 me from the Salvation Army eating line. You see, when I was out there, I was like a mad dog. I was always on the defense. I was always complaining. I was always in fear. That life was normal for me. I made lots of trips to the county jail. I never liked civil brand. Civil brand smelled to me. I didn't like Silver Brand. They had rotten food. Orange County has the best food. They have fried chicken on Wednesday and chocolate cake. I still remember the menu. Yeah, I made a lot of trips to the county. And on this particular day, my girlfriend, who was my crime partner, who was going to prison, she said, Norma, you better call your mom and get some help. Now, I had called my mother many, many, many times, and she was like too through with me. And I called her up, and she said, for God's sake, Norma, I'm making dinner for Johnny Harris. If you want to get sober, you write to this place in Indio. And I had never heard of Indio. But she said she's going to send me to the best recovery home that she knew. I went around that jail saying, I'm going to Betty Ford. I'm going to be sunning and mudding with Elizabeth Taylor. I told you what I looked like. I would have never fit into that spot. Yeah. So she, one of the ladies she sponsored picked me up from the county. She drove me as far as Riverside. My mom picked me up in Riverside. She had that conversation some of you might have with those you love. She said, Norma, give yourself a break. This might be the last time you ever have to do this. And I pray that it is. And she said, just listen and just go there and listen. And she's going, no, I don't even know what else she said. I started shrinking in my seat. She's nagging again. And we pull up in front of this old building, and I always remember AA as being old. And bigger than Hootenanny comes an old lady down the steps. She said, don't use the phone and sleep on the couch. I don't know about you, but I'm like, who can I call? Somebody get me out of here. But in the morning when that sweet old woman who has passed away, she asked me that question not supposed to ask arrogant people. She asked me what my drug of choice was. And I said, heroin. And she said, did you ever use alcohol? And I said, yes. And she said, can you see how your alcoholism led you to try other things? And I believed that was my first moment of clarity. And I said, yes. She goes, therefore, we identify ourselves as an alcoholic. We no longer want to be different. That person that might save your life that day might be an alcoholic and not relate to the other. She said, you get a sponsor and you work the steps. I got to really hurry up here because I only have a few minutes. I want you to know that because I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I still was very resentful at my mother. And my mother would say to me, Norma, I'm really sorry for the kind of mother I was, but you gotta forgive me for you. I started working the steps. I told you I kicked God out of my life when I was 8 years old. I was doing the 3rd step, the 7th step. I had no clue that they meant God. 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 When I realized this was the God, I got a little upset, and I would say, I don't know about this God. And then they'd say, pick something greater than yourself. And they would say silly little things like a doorknob. And I go, I ain't praying to no doorknob. In the desert, it's very windy. So I chose the wind as my God. You see, I didn't sleep for a long time. And I could hear the trees slam against the window in the middle of the night. And I'd go outside and I'd see the sand stir. You see, I can't see what moves them. But I see the tree move and I see the sand stir. So I chose the wind as my God. And every time it touched me, I acknowledged that was God. And I said, please keep me sober today. And the nighttime I said, thank you. I got to tell you this. When I was 30 days in that recovery home, I had 23 days in jail. And when I had 30 days in that recovery home, they let me go to an outside meeting. And in my mind, the only Chicana in the whole place, it's Indio. There's a lot of Chicanas, I'm sure. But she took me to my first outside meeting in Palm Springs. And the women were beautiful like you ladies. And they had cloth on the table, and they had real china glasses, and everybody was laughing and talking and kissing and hugging. And the meeting's going on. And in the middle of the meeting, this woman who took me to the meeting gets up and she gets the coffee and she starts serving them. And newcomer, if you be like me, if you have a mind like me, I said, they make the Mexicans serve the coffee here. When we're going home, I'm kind of tacky that way. I asked her, what, Esther, we got to serve the coffee? And she looks at me like I wet the floor. She goes, Norma, are you kidding? I do it because without them I can't stay sober. She goes, I do it because it makes me feel good. I do it because I love them. And she taught me about service. I did the steps. I started doing that. I got a relationship with my God. And what happened for me is my grandmother died when I was 16 months sober. That grandmother that I loved and I adored, she died. And I got mad at my sober God. I said, take my mama, take my sister, 2 for 1. Give me my grandma back. You see, I wasn't done loving on her. But when God takes something away, he always replaces it with something else, you see. And, I had to do 5 more inventories on my mother and my sister so I could let them off my expectation hook. And this Saturday, let me tell you, I forgot to tell you, I gotta tell you this. When I was doing the mota deal, I called my sister. My sister called me and she told me she was coming to AA. I got so upset because she called me, she wants to come to AA. She told me she was living in Colorado Springs and it was a dry state. So I sent her a little weed. She broke her sobriety. Obviously, she wasn't done. I helped her to remove all doubt. And this Saturday, my sister is celebrating 29 years of sobriety. And you see, when I was a little girl, I used to pray for that certain kind of mama. And I used to pray for that certain kind of sister. And I have it today. You see, I've had to do a lot of inventory so I can let other people off my expectation hook. Off my expectation hook. When my grandmother died, she left me money. I finished my steps by the time I was 9 months sober because I was of the desperate variety and I wanted to show you that it didn't work. And anyway, so when I remembered I owed this girl money, and I went to her house and I was talking to God, thanking him for me being willing. I knocked on the door and she says, get away from here, Norma. You better get out of here. We're calling the cops. You see, I remembered I owed her some money. The book says we pause when undecided, and we ask God to direct us. And I paused, and then it came to me. You see, when I was on the streets and a cop would stop me and get me with an open container, he'd give me a ticket. And then he'd come around, a different one would come around, give me one for instigating a riot, a paraphernalia. They always give you court dates. I never went. I was too busy. I always had to be doing stuff. And so when a cop came around, I'm no knucklehead. He asked my name. I knew I had a warrant. I gave her name. And I remember this when I'm standing in front of her door. I picked up 2 felony beefs. They picked her up. She was a little resentful. She tells me if I don't get out of here, she's calling the cops. And I remembered that. And I said, well, I've made every attempt. Just, I could tell my spot. I'm thinking that in my hand goes. And I said that I was sorry for any pain I had caused her, that she had been nothing but kind and loving to me, and that I was only there to right the wrong I had done, and she opened the door. I went in there and started telling her what I'd been learning here, and I had the check. It was about $500 or $700. She didn't want it. When I left, and let me tell you, man, I was sweating. The bigger brothers and all these big old Mexicans and I was littler then. Anyway, I was all jazzed. I had that money. And then 2 weeks later, she calls me up and she tells me she wants the money. I have to call my sponsor. I'm a little resentful. She should have took the money when I was offering it to her. All bets are off, right? If you're lucky enough to have a sponsor like she said, oh, Norma, give them their money. You're only holding it for them. Click. You see, I have gone to live 2 lifestyles in one lifetime. And I never did a good deed to deserve it. I never did a kind thing. And I have more than I need, and I have more than I deserve. I believe that God looks at my defects of character like when you have a little baby puppy. When you have those little tiny baby puppies and you have them, and he goes, and he smells like bologna, don't they? And in the nighttime, you make him a little place to sleep on the kitchen floor, and you give him a little blankie. And in the morning, you go and see the puppy, and he's made little tiny baby poo-poos and slams his foot in it. They always do, don't they? I think they can't move fast enough, And you don't beat the dog. You just clean up the little caquita, and you rub on him, and you send him on his way. And I believe that that's how God looks at my defects of character, because without them, I will not change and I will not grow. I can't believe that I have my own brand of dignity, that anywhere I go, I walk tall, and I would have missed out on all of it, but for the grace of God. I thank you, and I know that I'm probably not going to do it the way you think I should do it. I know I'm not going to do it the way I used to do it, and I thank God I'm not doing it like then.